Well, happy holidays and hello there again, everybody. This is Dr. Langlois of the Pet Pantry of Lancaster County and current president of the Pennsylvania Veterinary Medical Association, coming to you with more wonderful holiday pet safety tips. And, now we're going to focus on all that wonderful baking and cooking and treats and all of that stuff that happens around the holidays. So we are here in the Pet Pantry kitchen, and I have some wonderful things here that you need to be aware of if you are going to be having animals at your holiday gathering. So the first thing is, we sometimes like to spoil our pets with wonderful little, candy cane shaped rawhides, different types of treats, things that they may not have always been used to or they get, maybe once a year. And you do want to be aware that obviously if your pet does have certain dietary restrictions or things like that, that anything such as maybe homemade treats as we've got here that may be dropped off by a neighbor or a friend or a family member or something, that if there are special dietary restrictions for your pets, you want to make sure they're aware of that and not, accidentally give your pet something that they might develop a little bit of a food sensitivity to. So that's number one. Number two, if they are going to get these things such as rawhides or these large chews, obviously make sure that it is fit to the size of the dog. If you get these really small ones and you've got a Rottweiler or a Great Dane, there's a chance they could swallow those pieces whole, and that can lead to a whole bunch of problems in their gut as far as having obstructions or things of that nature. So make sure you get those to the right size. Moving right along. Now we're going to talk about some of the stuff that we do, that wonderful baking, treats, breads, all that wonderful thing. I don't do any of that because I would figure out a way to burn ice cream if they gave me a chance to actually touch anything involving baking. But we're here to talk about pets. So the first thing I'm going to bring up, and it's something that a lot of people still are not really aware of, is this right here. Grapes and raisins are very toxic to dogs. Now, it doesn't happen in every single dog, but we don't know basically which dogs it might happen in, which dogs it might not. So the basic prevailing wisdom is avoid raisins. Do not have your dog anywhere near where they can ingest even one or two, because it can lead to a very severe and sometimes life-threatening kidney failure, kidney damage type of situation for your dog. So that's really, really important to remember. Again, grapes the same way. We're not exactly sure of the true mechanism of it behind it, but we are researching it. But in the meantime, definitely avoid the raisins, with your dogs. Doesn't really seem to be an issue in cats, but I would try to avoid those in cats as well. So that's all you have to worry about the raisins. Oh, I hope that didn't open. All right, next thing that a lot of people like to serve at their holiday gatherings are these wonderful mixed nuts. And most nuts, peanuts, almonds, cashews, things like that, are okay for your dog. They are a little bit of a higher fat content a lot of times, and so you want to worry about that only because it may cause some gastric upset, vomiting, diarrhea, things like that, because it is a high fatty food that they're not completely used to. One nut you definitely do want to avoid, though, is macadamia nuts. Do not let your dog anywhere near macadamia nuts. In addition to some of the GI signs that your dog can get, we are worried about some neurologic weakness issues secondary to ingesting macadamia nuts. So really, just try to avoid the nuts. They can have a little bit here and there if they want, but definitely no macadamia nuts. So that's the nut issue. The next thing, I have some yeast packets here. A lot of people like to bake their own bread or goods like that. Don't give your dog any of the yeast dough. I know sometimes everybody's tempted to give them a little piece, things like that, because you have to remember the yeast is still going to be working after they ingest it and down into their stomach. What does yeast produce? Two things, basically: alcohol and gas. So the important things that in regards to your dog are basically that it can lead to a bloat condition in your dog, and since it is sort of producing a little bit of alcohol, and that alcohol has nowhere to go but basically be absorbed by your dog's body, your dog is kind of producing its own moonshine and enjoying it at the same time. So we have seen those rare instances of intoxication issues, things like that, when it comes to yeast dough. So really just try to avoid the yeast dough as well. Two other things that I'm going to mention. The first, obviously, is everybody kind of knows about the whole chocolate thing and avoiding chocolate with pets and stuff like that. And yes, that is very true. And if your dog happens to get into something that was made with a chocolate, it is really important that you have the label information or the ingredients, because your veterinarian needs to know exactly what type of chocolate it was, because different types of chocolate have different kind of toxin levels to it. And the biggest thing that we're really worried about with chocolate is a compound that is very similar to caffeine, so it can have some effects on their heart. You are probably going to see some vomiting and diarrhea secondary to chocolate ingestion no matter what. That's not as much of a concern as the potential effects of caffeine on their heart and causing some arrhythmias. But it is a dose-dependent thing and a type-dependent thing. So you really want to know exactly what type of chocolate you're dealing with if your pet were to ingest it. The bigger concern we have sometimes with those is that those chocolates a lot of times are wrapped up in very elaborate wrappers and you know, foil wrappers, plastic wrappers, things like that. Most people know some dogs that eat are not indiscriminate as far as what they want to ingest. So they're going to ingest the whole thing, and we actually worry more sometimes about those wrappers than we do the actual chocolate or things like that. So that's an important thing to remember too. So just try to, you know, make it so that everything is avoided and that no kids are feeding the little dogs things from under the table, or even the big kids are not feeding things to dogs under the table, because that can be a problem too. The final thing that I'm going to talk about when it comes to baking and things of that nature is a certain type of sweetener, and it's called xylitol, and we're seeing it in more and more products that are out there. It used to really just be in a very few set of products. Sugar-free gum was actually the big thing that we first noticed it in, and dogs that ingest xylitol develop this life-threatening drop in their blood sugar. And as I said, it's only something then that can be treated at a veterinarian. It involves hospitalization and very, very in-depth care to kind of help pull them through. And you're seeing a couple of graphics now of the common things that usually have xylitol in them now. Some peanut butters are a very big thing, but again, it's very big right now in the artificial sweetener world instead of sugar. So be on the lookout for that. Avoid anything with xylitol for dogs, because again, you want to be sitting down enjoying your holiday meal. You don't want to be sitting in an emergency clinic hoping that your precious furry family member is doing okay. So again, hope everybody enjoys this holiday season, has some wonderful treats, that you share the appropriate holiday treats with your dogs as well. And we will be back with one final set of tips towards the end of the week involving those anxious and nervous animals that we want to make sure we take care of. This is Dr. Bryan Langlois of the Pet Pantry of Lancaster County and the Pennsylvania Veterinary Medical Association. Ho, ho, ho! We will see you next time. For all these tips and further tips on how to keep your pets happy and healthy during this holiday season, be sure to check out the Pennsylvania Veterinary Medical Association at pavma.org and talk to the most trusted source for all information regarding your pet's health, your local veterinarian.